What's good, y'all? Hope everybody's well. Welcome back to the Onyx Report. Uh-oh. Sounds a little weird. Hold on. All right. Hopefully. No, that sounds about the same. Wait a minute. Getting a little ringing. Try and straighten it out a little bit if possible. Last ditch attempt. All right. Well, I guess it's going to be in my ear for a little bit. Hopefully, it's not hitting y'all too bad. Anyway, hope everybody's well. Shout out to those of y'all that came through a little bit early. Big Mo, what's up? Tim Howard, what's going on? Design and art, what's happening? Shout out to Barry Little, dropping information on the channel, every show. Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Hope you're well, good brother. Urban Naturalist, what's going on? We got Barry in the house again with the donation early. Tuition drop. Please hit the like button on the way in. Thank you. Become a member, donate, and support. All of that good stuff. Appreciate them getting the word out. Like, share, support. Donate. All of that good stuff. Subscribe, donate, all of that. Please do so you can support the channel. We can continue to bring you this independent black male thought. So shout out to those of you already coming through with that. Urban Naturalist with the early super sticker. Appreciate it. Kiel, shout out to you on the Cash App. Thank you for that. We got Indigo in the house. What's happening? Shout out to Layman's Journal. Make sure y'all are supporting the Layman's Journal channel. He just dropped a crazy video on the film Rosewood. I think he's got one coming up on Love Jones. I'm looking forward to. Did a master class on race, dealing with Rosewood, race and representation in that film, among other things. So please make sure you're supporting the Layman's Journal channel. What's good, Prince? LXST in the building. What's happening? Got Ghetto User. What's happening? Supreme Pivot. What's going on? King. Inspired Truth. What's happening? Black Males. Shout out to you. Tiger Crane. What's going on? Let's see. Guy Incognito. Paul. What's happening, Paul? Dr. Thunder in the house. Talked to Dr. Thunder a little bit earlier today. Want to congratulate him. He just secured full professor status. If you don't know, in the university system, there's 3 levels. There's assistant, there's associate, and there's full professor. And that's generically speaking across different fields and different universities. That's a generic kind of breakdown. So the highest level you can get to is full. And that's not necessarily including endowed chairs and things of that nature. But the good brother, Dr. Thunder, just achieved the highest status as a full professor out there. So shout out to Dr. Thunder. Make sure you support the Dr. Thunder channel. He's doing his thing on both fronts, in the academy as well as on YouTube. And he does the early morning shows. So make sure you hit that and check him out, especially if you're up. That's I think he's around 8:30 Eastern time. If I messed that up, let me know. Correct me in the comments, Dr. Thunder. But shout out to you, good brother, and congratulations. Jay Dossman, what's happening? Let's see. OPW, what's up? Cynical Optimist, what's going on? Got Jay Dossman with the support. Appreciate that. All right. OX Hermes, what's good with you? So I'm going to try one last thing. See if this ringing can go away. All right. Is it still? Yeah, it's still there. It's one of those things. Every time I turn my system on, it's a gamble. Shout out to Ghetto User for the support. Appreciate that. Yep. Dr. Thunder confirms 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. So that means, when I pop on YouTube at 5:30, he's usually doing his thing. So check him out. Shout out to John Smith. Shout out to Gabriel. What's going on? All right. So today we are going to deal with some DEI stuff, and I most particularly am interested in getting some of you guys to give me your experience, your thoughts, whether it's DEI in the workplace, whether it's in media, whether it's in the corporate world, whatever. We definitely want to get this conversation going, because I think black men, heterosexual black men most particularly, have a unique position in this DEI discourse. And it's much like the position we hold in the upcoming presidential election. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Shout out to my good brother William A. Smith. What's up, Doc? know, and I need to congratulate the good brother as well. He just got an incredible promotion. I saw it. I think I saw it on LinkedIn. But I don't have it prepared, so I can't read it off. Prestigious brother. Shout out to him. If you're not familiar, look up his book. The brother's brilliant and he's doing his thing. So he says, I'm hanging as long as I can. Looking forward to your analysis. I'm looking forward to your analysis. So we need to highlight each other. I need to see what your experience with that has been. Shout out to Adisa. What's good, man? Hope you're well. Hope things are going well out there. Okay. There we go. Go ahead and put it out there. Dr. Smith, distinguished. That's right. Not just, some of the titles that you're familiar with, but distinguished. Shout out to that brother. Congratulations to you. I hope you and your family are well, and I do hope you get your feet picked up and you're getting some much needed peace and rejuvenation. Much deserved. Appreciate Adisa for that donation. Now, before we jump in to this whole DEI question, I do want to shout out. We'll do a shout out to some of these brothers in this Drizzle Drizzle movement. I haven't talked about it, and I know a lot of the brothers that are on YouTube a lot have had a lot of conversation about it. So some of what I'm going to show, you guys are already familiar with. But for those who aren't necessarily, running in those social media streets and may not be familiar, I'm not going to do a deep dive into it, but I do have to say, this shit has had me crying, laughing. I mean, these brothers are so brilliant at some of the stuff they're doing. It's broken across racial barriers. It's gone global. That I gotta say it's incredibly hilarious to me. But there's some other thoughts I want to share very briefly. So I'm gonna show you some of the things I took a smattering of videos that I ran across that had me crying. But essentially, what I do know about it is in many ways a response to the Sprinkle movement started by Shiva 7. And that was basically, the codification of this whole idea of really essentially prostitution, prostitutionizing, whatever. Anyway, basically what it is it's framing young women in particular, women in general, across race, how to monetize their sexuality with men, how to manipulate, how to exploit men, so on and so forth. So this sprinkle movement has been going on for a while now. And a couple of brothers recently started their own response, and that's going to work. Now, I'm not playing, I don't have any clips readily available on the two brothers that founded it. So no disrespect to them. I just grabbed a few that I just thought were hilarious. So let's check out a few of the videos where brothers are articulating their needs in relationships in response to what Sprinkle's been laying out. Here we go.
I'm texting this girl and she keep asking, what you doing? I'm like, man, I'm at the mall. I'm about to get me some cologne and shit. She was like, oh, okay. And what you gonna be doing after that? I had to go ahead and block her, bruh. Because what you're not gonna do is you're not finna keep asking me what you doing. And then when I tell you what I'm doing and I say I'm about to buy me some cologne, you don't send me half the money. That's unacceptable.
Okay, when you guys say it's choppy, is the video choppy or am I choppy? Both? Somebody let me know. What's going on? What are you guys hearing? Somebody said it's my sound, but is it just me or is it the video too? Hold on. Yeah, I'm having some mic problems today, and I usually don't. So, let's see. Hello? Yep. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just there today. I apologize. Let's see. So it says, okay. It says the video is good. It's just my sound. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. I do apologize. The mic is acting weird. All right, but here, let me just let you finish the videos, though.
That's just low effort. And I don't care that I didn't ask you for the money. You should just know. You should read my mind. You should understand that if I'm buying me something, why aren't you chipping in? Why aren't you pitching in to help me get whatever it is that I'm trying to buy? You're not. You're worthless right now. You see what I'm saying? And I really don't feel bad about it, because why are you in my life? Why are you here? And then this really your third day in a row texting me, asking me what I'm doing. I tell you what I'm doing. You don't make the efforts to make plans. you don't make the efforts to try to see me, I gotta get you out of here. Cause honestly, I do everything by myself anyway. So if you're not adding to my life immediately when we first meet, it's like, why are you here? I gotta get you gone. I'm in my soft guy era and I won't accept nothing less.
I'm loving this. I'm loving this. This is just a random assortment. So
Nah, I gotta make a video about this one. So girl was texting me, right? I'm at Hobby Lobby. I just finished shopping at Hobby Lobby, right? She texting me, hey, how you doing? How you been? I'm like, I'm good. You know, I'm blessed, you know. She asked me, well, what are you doing right now? I said, well, I'm at Hobby Lobby. You know, I was buying some stuff, buying some art supplies. Cool. I finished checking out at the register. She didn't reply back after I let her know what I was doing. And so now here we are. I'm done. I already purchased what I was going to purchase at Hobby Lobby and the Cash App didn't hit me. So guess what? I had to go ahead and block this girl. You're not gonna, no. See, you're not gonna be in my life. You're not gonna be in my life and not elevate me, right? Especially when I'm telling you exactly what I'm doing. You should already know. I'm gonna hit that Cash App because baby boy out here shopping for art supplies, you know what I'm saying, getting his hustle on because he an artist. You know, he need to get the art supplies for the art so he can paint. He need the canvas, he need the brushes. Let me go ahead and slide him a couple $100. You know what I'm saying? A couple hundos. Because, you know, a couple hundos will do that. That'll buy some paintbrushes and some paint and some canvases, right? No. But she didn't do that. That's why she had to get blocked. Because why you in my life? If you're not elevating me, see, I got to proceed to where the grass is greener on the other side. See, that's where they're messing up, King. Drizzle, drizzle. That's where they're messing up, Kings.
oh my God, these cats got me crying.
Hey, Drizzle Drizzle King, I cannot believe I'm on the phone with a girl who says she likes me and not even 2 minutes into the conversation proceeds to ask me where you at. Mind you, on the phone that she don't pay no bills on, about me in a car that she ain't put no gas in, ain't put in on no car note. Drizzle Drizzle, that was the first red flag I seen. But since I'm in my soft guy era, I say, you know what, I'm gonna give her a pass. I say I'm on the way to get my hair shaped up right after I get me something to eat. Tell me why the very next sentence out her mouth is, oh, I can't wait to see you. Send me a picture. What? You not gonna cash at me? PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, Bitcoin? Who you bank with? But you want a picture. Drizzle Drizzle. It's giving low on funds. Drizzle Drizzle. It's giving I can't handle the pressure of a real man. Drizzle Drizzle. It's giving do we need to start dating their mamas because where's all the real women at?
It's given. Those are killing me. Man. It's giving broke. You know, it's incredibly simple, but we've seen this for so long. You know, coming from women that it's been normalized, and it actually took the two brothers that founded it to really kind of highlight how stupid this shit has been. But you know, it wasn't long, surprisingly enough, before white men got in on it and other groups of men. And it's just been hilarious. So there's a number of them that I ran across, but this was just one I just picked at random. Here we go. Now, wait a minute. First of all, why this motherfucker come in walking smooth as hell on top of it all? He's killing me.
Swipe left immediately. I'm not a slave. High value is having my life too. That's under the soft guy era. This soft guy era, I'm only dating chicks who can keep up with my hefty requirements of Johnny Walker Blue. I won't tolerate anything less than that. You think I expect you to pick up your dirty clothes off the floor, but you're not gonna give me Johnny Walker Blue? Drizzle Drizzle, baby. In my soft guy era, I am only dating women who can at least double what I already have. So I've got a 6-bedroom, 7,000 square foot house. I am only gonna date women who have at least a 12-bedroom, 14,000 square foot house. Drizzle Drizzle. In my soft guy era, I am no longer driving a vehicle that takes 1.9 seconds to get to 60 miles an hour. I'm only going to date a woman who can provide me with a vehicle that goes 0 to 60 in 1 second, because if she really loved me, she would understand that 2 seconds to get to 60 is way too long. Drizzle Drizzle. Soft guy era.
Look, man, I'm not gonna play all of this. This shit is killing me. This is killing me. And it's one thing when you see everyday brothers, talking about it, but you even got rich white dudes in on it. I'm like, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving the global impact. But there was one video that hit me, and it hit me because I was listening to a conversation not long ago that I think BGS and Black Uru were having about the potential of what this can lead to. And I think they were right. Let me see if I can share this with y'all. Y'all see for yourselves.
Any of you all, but now y'all want to start this soft guy era, this drizzle drizzle movement, right? Listen, any man that's comfortable with the woman coming out of her purse or her pocket spending money on you, understand this, you'll do the same with a man.
Oh, brother.
Now, come on, Auntie. You know better than this. After all these videos you done seen on TikTok, this is what you came up with? Look, people like what they like. That's cool. But for me, I love women from head to toe, always and forever. If a woman want to go in that purse and pay for me, I'm going to let her do it. Now, will I let her struggle? Nah, I won't. Like I said before, I'm far from a stingy man. But why would I rob a woman of having the ability to invest in me? I don't care what nobody say. If he wanted to, he would. But if she wanted to, she would. I've always been about respect for women, showing love to women, because I came from a woman. But one thing I am not going to let slide is y'all trying to make men feel bad for wanting reciprocation from women.
Uh-oh.
Hell no.
Uh-oh.
I don't need a woman to chase me.
Uh-oh.
I don't need a woman to fake the funk. But baby, if you want me, come and show me. But I will reciprocate. As a man that grew up doing so much for women, only to get nothing back, baby, that discernment has told me if she ain't trying to show me what she working with, then she's not the one for me.
I'll see the thing that hit me watching some of these, and y'all probably know a lot more of them than I do. They still killing me, but you're starting to hear drops of something sincere. You know what I mean? The humor is still there. A lot of people a lot of women are still not getting the trolling aspect of it, which I don't understand. But what I'm also starting to see is that brothers are figuring out some things. And this is what Dr. Black Uru and BGS were talking about. They were talking about how this conversation, as funny as it is and humorous as it is going to generate something more. It's going to generate something more sincere, and it's actually going to indoctrinate a generation of men into thinking about where they stand, because we were never programmed, we were never socialized to think along those terms. For men in particular, for Black men most particularly, I'm Gen X. I came out of the 80s. The game that we learned, unless you were around some hardcore brothers, most of the stuff you got from media was all about serving and idolizing and pedestalizing women and putting them on this unnatural, platform. And it was all about female worship. So these young men are actually being introduced to an era where, even if it is trolling on one level, there's some sincerity that's starting to come out. And my bet is that it's going to continue until it evolves into something that, it cuts like a knife. Now, it's hilarious. I love it. I love the attitude behind it. I love the subtle fuck you behind it. But I'm also starting to hear brothers coming out with some true shit, and it's mixed into the humor. So I'm loving it. I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm curious to see where brothers take it. But even if it just stays like it is and it doesn't evolve at all, I can't help but laugh. I cannot help but laugh. So shout out to the brothers on that mission, Drizzle Drizzle. I hope y'all handle that. Keep doing what you gotta do. All right. So anyway, we gonna get to it. But I had to tip my hat to the brothers, because it's been going on for a minute. I hadn't said anything, but I'm proud. I'm proud of the cats that are doing it. And I'm curious to see how creative the things that come out of it continue to be. So anyway, so let's get to some of this. I was going to cover some other things, but I'm not going to. I'll do a separate show on some of those other things that one in particular. But today we're going to talk a little bit about DEI. And if you're not familiar, DEI has to do with diversity, equality, and inclusion. And you see these offices, these positions, diversity officers, these positions that are held They're referenced before, media projects are made. Most of us are familiar with it coming from like things like Disney and Marvel or whatnot. We've seen it in media, but we also have heard about it in terms of, corporate functions, the academy, the university system. You have people that are hired to diversify the environments they're in, to weigh in on the corporate culture of a given space and try and force or bring about some type of inclusion. And now, obviously, I'm not against that. I'm not, fundamentally in terms of the way that works. But the way contemporary DEI is set up, it's based more so off of intersectionality than anything else. And what that's kind of brought about in many ways is a very quick shorthand framework for what value certain people have in the DEI kind of hierarchy. And what we're kind of seeing in a way is this kind of watered down version, right? That it really begins to highlight certain key personalities, certain key ideas and archetypes that in many ways help to contribute, in my humble opinion, to making Black men invisible, heterosexual Black men, as a matter of fact. Let's see. Yep. See, with some of the brothers are already starting to come with that in the comments section. So, but I want to go through a couple of pieces that I ran across together so we can kind of make sense of some of this and see if some information will help us kind of deal with it. All right. So let me switch this up so you guys can see it. Might have to enlarge. So I'm not going to go through all of this article, but this is the first one you can find in Forbes. It's called "Does DEI Focus Too Much on Black People?" This is written by Janice Jason Masari. So you can probably kind of see that there's some different interests involved, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But this particular piece comes out on Forbes. I put all the links in the description box for most of the stuff I'm going to cover tonight. So if you're interested in that, it's there. But the only reason I'm including this one is because she does kind of give us a little bit of a political overview that I thought would be a good starting off point, right? So this particular piece dealing with the whole question of diversity, equity, I said equality earlier, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and talks about, the rise of the impact of it. Well, all right, I'll start with this first paragraph. Let's see here. Actually, I haven't done this in a while. Let's see if this thing still works. Don't know if it does. Let's see. Uh-oh. Oh, yes, it doesn't. I have to go get Snoop again. But anyway, so I'll read it myself. So, do diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts focus too much on Black people? This question, or an iteration of it, has been asked ad nauseum on LinkedIn as of late. Is there too much of an emphasis on Black employees specifically? This inquiry deserves further analysis. DEI as a field/industry saw a sharp rise in interest following the murder of George Floyd. CNBC reported in January of 2020 that demand for diversity and inclusion professionals was expected to rise. Prior to 2020, the Me Too movement had led to more discussions about gender equity in the ways that misuse of power manifests. Then came the pandemic and the killing of George Floyd. The focus became racism, anti-Blackness, and the specific harms that the Black community has faced. Now, I'm going to stop here for a quick second because I want it to be known. I want us to clarify and put it out there on the table in a way that nobody else wants to publicly, right? It starts in response to Black male death. Just like we've seen with protest movements like BLM, these people like vultures, they feed off of Black male death. But then the question has to be raised, do Black men actually benefit from all of these things that are supposed to be products of our deaths? Right? That's the question we're going to need to look into tonight. And I obviously don't think that's the case, but let's continue on. So she's talking about how this kicks off in regard to George Floyd, right? So within the last 2 years, we've seen companies pledge millions and billions of dollars to combat racial injustice and systemic racism. How many of those dollars contributed actually turned into policy in regard to most particularly Black male death? Right? Hold on. This is something a brother shared from my book. Never dawned on me to even share. So I think I will take the cue from him. There it is. So Now, these numbers are low, all in all, but they're based on reported numbers in regard to the deaths of Black men, right, at the hands of police violence. So let me go ahead and pull this up. And I think it's important because I want us to make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that we seem to be the starting point over and over again, right? So this is from page 83 of my book, Flat Blackness, Flat Maleness, Black Andro Mortality. This is one of the chapters. And the book itself, of course, I should have showed at the beginning, but I skipped over it. Solutions for Anti-Black Misandry. That's the shorthand of it by yours truly. But on this page, you can see the police homicide rates in the Black community by race and gender, 2015 to 2023. And obviously, it's only March of 2023. So the numbers have continued to go up, I'm sure. But nevertheless, you can see you got the first column, of course, dealing with the year. You got the second column dealing with the number of deaths in regard to Black women. And then you got the last two columns, of course, dealing with Black men. Right? So you can see the numbers of homicide deaths. The source information is useful information as well. This comes from a national epidemic, fatal anti-transgender violence in the United States. This is in response to a statement somebody had made on my Facebook page once. And they were talking about how many Black transgenders were being killed by police, and that it was in a crazy astronomical number. And all we do is we focus on Black men. Well, obviously we focus on Black men because Black men are the ones that are dying, right? But according to the report that came out in 2019, it says of the 20 to 26 actual transgender homicides across race per year, I'm sorry, I skipped over a little part. It says 3% of the 20 to 26% 20 to 26 actual transgender homicides. I'm rusty, y'all. Forgive me. Across race per year are police homicides. So only 3%. So you take that number of 20 to 26 transgender people who were killed, and 3% of them were killed by police. The Human Rights Campaign reports that 15 trans people have been killed by police or while incarcerated in jails, prisons, or ICE detention centers since 2013. And so that's clearly not dealing with ADOS when you start talking about ICE detention centers, right? In all, just to put it in context, whether you're talking about transgender, whether you're talking about Black women, when you're talking about Black men, there is a reason that Black male deaths end up kicking off the discussion in a lot of different circles, whether it has to do with protest movements or DEI, or the precepts of what DEI is supposed to stand for. You see why the emphasis is placed on Black men, because Black men lead in deaths, right? And so that being said, at some point, we need to highlight how this continues to happen when it comes to Black males. We continue to find Black males to be the source and the beginning point, even though they don't generally benefit. Shout out to Malcolm. He says, this is my first time sending money to someone on YouTube, and I made sure it would be you. Thank you, sir, for all that you do. Much appreciated, Malcolm. Thank you very much for that donation. Shout out to Dead Set. Coolest voice on YouTube. What's good with you, man? He says, I think that DEI is akin to affirmative action and that other groups, especially white women, benefited more. DEI focuses on an expanded definition of color, which still includes white women. I agree. Let's see. All right. Anyway, so let me continue this and we'll move on. I'm not going to stay on this long. So we were talking about the millions and billions of dollars donated to combat racial injustice and systemic racism, much of which never went anywhere as far as policy in regard to Black men in particular. And we definitely don't see it trickling down in any significant way. Despite the exorbitant donations that have been doled out by corporations, Black employees, and other racially marginalized employees continue to experience exclusion, harm, and trauma at the hands of organizations and institutions. Black employees continue to experience it. I skipped over that. Anyway, DEI has evolved and morphed a lot over the past decades. An interest in diversity education grew in the 1960s following the civil rights movement, right? The movement started as a way to advocate for justice and equality for African Americans. I want you to remember the way they term that. I'm going to show you something in this article a little bit later that really encapsulates what I'm saying. The movement started as a way to advocate for justice and equality for African Americans. In 1964, the passage of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act made it illegal to discriminate against anyone who belonged to a protected class. Many organizations adopted diversity education as a way to avoid litigation. Over the years, when you look at what diversity education is focused on, there hasn't ever really been a specific and explicit focus on Black employees and their unique experiences until George Floyd. Right? So they've skipped from the 1960s all the way to George Floyd in this article, which I find interesting. But again, we keep talking about African Americans, we keep talking about Black people, so on and so forth. So prior to George Floyd, Black people were viewed as part of the subgroup of people of color. Some argue that DEI efforts that focus on Black people do not take into consideration other communities that experience marginalization. And then she starts talking about other communities, right? She talks about Blackness here. She starts talking about Indigenous Australians. She starts talking about Africans. She starts talking about Latinos, Afro-Latinx. She starts talking about Brazil, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Latin America. And she goes into India and the caste system. She kind of goes all over the mulberry bush and whatnot, East Asian countries. And then she jumps into Palestine and she jumps to Egypt. And so she's mentioning this stuff. And then, there's an interesting shift. From here, she says, within any marginalized community you can name, individuals that are Black or have Black proximity experience the most severe forms of harm. She starts talking about Black transgender, gender non-conforming folks, and she skips into Black mothers, right? Black women in the United States have higher maternal mortality rates. She starts to mention the pandemic, and then kind of goes from there. Anything missing? I mean, we talked about George Floyd as really a kind of symbol for Black men. Do you see the term Black men brought about at all? As if George Floyd is just kind of this misnomer that comes out of nowhere, the singular individual that spawned a shift in the culture, but there's no context for George Floyd? Really? There's a long tradition that comes out of Black men being killed. Right? Shout out to Adisa, good brother. What's going on? He says, we're discussing this chapter in class next Thursday. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. That brother is a brilliant professor, chair of his department in San Diego, doing some beautiful work, and he's teaching, the first Black male studies course at his university, to the best of my knowledge. He's doing some great work, and he was kind enough to include my book. So every now and again, I get a little update on what's going on. So I hope everything's well with you, bro. We need to catch up. So anyway, what I found interesting about this article, it tried to give some historical context to DEI, but even in doing so, you kind of see the perspectives on Black men. There's a brief nod to an individual, but after that, it goes all around the world. And when it does begin to specify key demographics in the Black community, it deals with, LGBT, it deals with transgender, it deals with gender nonconforming. And then, of course, we're talking about Black women and Black mothers. That's what we're doing. Interesting. All right. So, Black men as a category, as a demographic, kind of ignored. Let's continue on, right? So we go from that to, let's look at this. So this gives us a breakdown. Since we're talking about DEI, let's actually see who are the people involved, right? Who exactly are the chief diversity officers and whatnot, and what can we learn about them? Well, according to this Zippia.com piece, Chief Diversity Officer Demographics and the Statistics in the U.S., we can start to see some of the statistics that frame who are actually doing these jobs, right? Who's representing people of color and all these categories we heard about a moment ago. So the first one we're looking at, obviously, is the gender breakdown, right? 54.5% of Chief Diversity Officers are female. Let me see if I can enlarge this. I went a little too far. Come on back. All right. So by an almost 10% margin, more women than men tend to be chief diversity officers. Right. Talk about the gender pay gap, right, between the two, male and female. Right, 91,000 for males, 84,000 for females. There we go. Chief diversity officer gender ratio over time. Right. So apparently, starting in 2010, right, you had a larger portion of men, 54 to 45. And then it slowly shifted over by the time we get to 2021, majority female, right? You can see a breakdown there. I'm not going to go through that. Chief Diversity Officer related jobs, gender ratio. All right. So you get to the key jobs. You see male and female. So when it comes to superintendents, you see a higher number of males. When it comes to other positions, you see a higher number of females, and of course, shout out to Dark Power for the donation on the Cash App. Appreciate that. Chief Diversity Officer listed almost in the middle at 55, where you can kind of see that breaking down. So we're seeing some of these positions, and they've broken it up into administrative assistants and salon managers. It's interesting they didn't have like nursing in here. I mean, they're the key areas of the academy, like in humanities and whole fields of study that you can see a clear gender divide. They didn't really do that. They're trying to show you this hierarchy between high level positions and low level positions, but there's a bit of disingenuousness there in terms of what they chose to compare. But it says we compared chief diversity officers with similar job titles to see how gender ratios vary. As you can see, district commercial superintendent and street superintendent have the biggest gender ratio gap. So they're doing this kind of hierarchical breakdown, but they could have done this in a number of different ways, I think. Anyway, in terms of the positions they chose, chief diversity officer demographics by race. All right. Most common ethnicity among chief diversity officers is white, which makes up 76.1% of all chief diversity officers. Comparatively, 7.8% of chief diversity officers are Hispanic or Latino, and 7.7% of chief diversity officers are Asian. The interesting thing about it is you can see Black just above American Indian. American Indian is at 0.7%, Black is at 3.8%. So if we're talking about movements that started with civil rights movement, or that were, regenerated with the contemporary deaths of Black men, Black folk are not particularly high in these positions, right? So we know these positions are majority female run, and we know that they are majority white run by a large margin, right? Hispanic Latino is the largest people of color, quote unquote, area at 7.8%, and they are dwarfed, as is everybody else, by whites at 76.1%. So not only are you going to get, and this is very much like affirmative action, right? It's supposed to be targeted toward, key ADOS groups, and then all of a sudden it ends up becoming the purview of white folk, and most particularly, in both cases, the purview of white women. Right? Because we know white women, basically, once they claimed to be minorities, they took over affirmative action, and much the same we see in terms of diversity, right? You would think that diversity would actually be led by people in diverse position. Now, I don't know. Let's see if they actually cover sexuality in this breakdown at all. So we got race, chief diversity officer, race and ethnicity over time. So I don't know if you can see that clearly enough. The green line is white, right? And so you can see a much higher position that whites have held in that position. And then everybody else way at the bottom, same information, breaks it down by year. Wage gap by race. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? So when we have these conversations about who benefits, right? Who actually benefits from these positions? It's not Black folk. And most particularly, it's not heterosexual Black men. According to our data, white chief diversity officers have the highest average salary compared to other ethnicities. Black or African American chief diversity officers have the lowest average salary at $89,538. So we see the breakdown. Some of you may have already run across this. I just wanted to put it up and document it before articles like these disappear, which we all know continues to happen. But let's see if they give us any. Nope, that's it. So, oh wait, hold on, my bad. Average chief diversity officer by age. All right. So for the most part, here we go. As far as Black folk are concerned, males 53, Black females 52, right? When it comes to whites, yeah, about the same age range. Right? So this tends to be, middle-aged, white, female dominated industry for the most part. So more of an age breakdown, tend to be over 40 for the most part, especially over 50. Let's see. Educational attainment, right? So at least a bachelor's degree, not a difficult industry to get into as far as that's concerned. So there's that. Wage gap by degree level, right? So master's degree and PhD are almost neck and neck, pretty much. Yeah, so it's like a roughly around a $10 difference, as a matter of fact. So you can come through and do well with the bachelor's. With a master's, you can do a little bit more, but it's only like $6,000-7,000, so it's not significant, right? Between the bachelor's, the master's, and the doctorate. Employee statistics. I'm trying to see if I'm really looking for one category, and I don't remember if they covered it, but I kind of doubt it. I was curious if they had sexuality listed in here. Company size where chief diversity officers work. All right, so the majority of which tend to be at larger companies with 1,000 to 10,000 employees, right? So the larger companies are kind of doing that. All right, let's see. By company type, so education leads, followed by public, followed by private, followed by government, right? So the academy is where you definitely see a lot of this. And of course, that's where a lot of the rhetoric, a lot of the language, a lot of the jargon is produced. So it's not, surprising that education is where you tend to see it. And I'm, again, I'm not against it. What I am against is the culture of it and how that's adversely impacted Black men. Let's see, chief diversity officer jobs by industry. There we go. Industry statistics. All right. Turnover and employment statistics. All right, so you got an unemployment rate that went down dramatically by 2015. Kind of leveled up a little bit after George Floyd. So interesting. But let's see. All right, so it tends to be a 1 to 2 year occupation. So there seems to be a lot of turnover. And from what I understand, people have complained that they'll get into these positions and they're token positions. This is coming from people I've spoken to directly who talk about being in these positions, and they're promised that they'll have power and influence, and they often find that they're tokens. They're brought in to perform diversity, to appear diverse, and of course, when they begin to push ideas, whether or not those ideas are followed is a whole different conversation. So it's not surprising in some respects that this has high turnover within a year or two. All right, some more tenure discussion here. Oh, here we go. Chief diversity officer LGBT ratio compared to similar jobs. Okay. So advertising. Oh, wow. Advertising and human resources. Interesting. All right. Review the percent of chief diversity officers that are members of the LGBT community. You can see how this compares to similar jobs in the chart below. All right. So in terms of chief diversity officer, which, has almost about 11.5%, we see 13% and almost 15% coming from payroll and human resources and advertising, respectively. Right. So, yeah, that. All right. Oh, raw numbers. All right. So they're dealing with actual job openings. Interesting. Global account managers. All right. So we're seeing some information here. Foreign languages. We get into French. All right. So that's the bottom of it. So from what we can tell, although you have, depending on the industry, up to nearly 15% LGBT, the majority of these positions are middle-aged white women. Right? Middle-aged white women. This is the industry, or one of many, that has started in response to Black male death. And as a matter of fact, I found an interesting article that kind of helps us put some of this into further context. Right? Why white women won DEI. Right? Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel, if you will, so we can continue. So yeah, why white women won DEI. This is by Aparna R, right? And begin, should white women and white folks more broadly get paid to do DEI work? This question has been swirling for some time now, and to be honest, I don't have an appropriate answer because, in my opinion, white women have already won. The data is clear. Over the past 10 years, white women not only hold the majority of executive roles, but are also the best compensated for this work with the longest tenures, right? Even as budgets have been slashed and women of color, in particular, Black women, have left organizations, there have been few high-profile exits of white DEI leaders over the past year. We don't have access to great data on individual consultants, but there's been a steady sentiment that white consultants get more and larger contracts when compared to their women of color peers, right? Because again, that's the important part. Notice it even in this discussion, you don't see it. So this is the chart we already saw before. They pulled some of the same information. Harvard Business Review found that concentration of demographic groups in decision-making roles can subtly shape agendas and priorities to be more aligned with their experiences and needs, which may exclude or marginalize others. DEI programming is being shaped by a group of people who have homogenous networks. Not surprising, right? You have a network that's primarily led by white women. What are they going to reproduce in terms of who gets hired in other areas, especially when they're already leading where they are? So it's a homogenous group that is reproducing itself. It's not a surprise then, as it says, that most DEI efforts mirror the superficiality of an elementary school culture day. God damn. In many ways, the Heritage Month celebrations inside of organizations remind me of my first career as a public school teacher and the annual making of toilet paper roll totems. Okay. White women's proximity to power is real. 2020 report from Catalyst, a nonprofit focused on advancing women in leadership, suggests that white women's close societal and often familial relationships with white men who predominantly hold high-level executive positions can result in better access to professional opportunities. This proximity to power, facilitated by shared cultural and social capital, has undoubtedly played a role in shaping the present landscape of DEI roles. Right. Sounds a whole lot different than affirmative action, doesn't it? Yeah. So, interestingly, right, the same dynamic is played out over and over again. We've seen this since, especially since the mid 20th century. Once there were earmarked resources that were supposed to go not only to people of color, but particularly to the Black community, we saw groups that came in and usurped that simply by relabeling themselves. Now, considering that they continued to marry, right, resources from that didn't just go to white women specifically, although one can make a strong argument for the advancement of women in this regard and the use of these resources to finance that advancement, white women and Black, white and Black, to do so and advance themselves politically, among other things, to increase their social capital, but they're still bringing it home. So we're still seeing this in white family structures, and it's not limited to white single mothers or something of that nature. They're the largest recipients of affirmative action, getting the largest share of economic, cultural, and leadership gains in the past 50 years. According to a comprehensive study conducted by McKinsey & Company in 2022, an overwhelming 63% of diversity and inclusion leadership roles were occupied by white women. While the presence of white women in DEI leadership may be seen by some as a testament to the progress we've made in addressing gender inequality, it also inadvertently casts a shadow on the very principles of DEI. Now, the interesting thing is the same thing happened with the very idea of intersectionality. Much of what has been appropriated in these kind of circles, right, these diversity circles, is intersectionality. And the same thing happened with the very concept. It was initially designed. Well, if you go back, the idea had been around. Black intellectuals had been discussing it before Kimberly Crenshaw developed it and formalized it. But there were others that were already doing that work, most particularly people like Robert Staples and whatnot. But by the time you get to 1989, Kimberly Crenshaw comes out formally with the concept. She's tying it directly to Black women as the most oppressed group. And she labels Black men as also oppressed, but they benefit because of their gender, right? This is the argument that comes out of early intersectionality. But over the years, white women have kind of appropriated this, much the same way we've seen with Me Too, right? They kind of appropriated it, and they don't even pay lip service to Black feminism anymore. So when you have articles like this written, by women of color or Black women in particular, what you're also hearing is the frustration that these ideas have been appropriated by white women. And often those very ideas were hostile to Black men in the first place. So again, when it comes back to this question of where Black men stand in these conversations, there's a degree of indifference, because we're basically listening to you complain about something you developed that was harmful, disrespectful, and disingenuous in regard to Black men, and it's been appropriated by white women. And we're supposed to cry about this. Hostility toward Black men has been ridiculous. Now, one of the easiest ways to see it is even when you look at pop culture, even when you look at, some of the stuff we've been talking about, DEI, it's been coming up a lot in regard to Marvel. As a matter of fact, being interviewed for a documentary first week of May on the Black Panther films. Brother wanted to interview me for his documentary to cover that. And that actually directly relates to DEI, because within the course of both films, in regard to Marvel and Disney at large, the whole idea how diversity should play out and equity and inclusion should play out in those films gives you a roadmap to what I'm saying has been happening with straight Black men in particular in regard to DEI culture. One of the first things you'll find, if you really watch the film, remember in the very first film, right? So understand something, for comic book heads like myself who've been collecting for over 45 years, Black Panther was considered one of the most, if not the most, brilliant Black character, intellectually speaking. Right? Now, this is a character that's made by white men, right, in Marvel Comics, but over the years, it's been Black men who played an instrumental role in taking that idea and actually, submerging it in Black culture, submerging it in really what is an African American based imagination that's fundamentally nationalist in many ways. They kind of usurped that character and pulled that in, right? So there's a kind of superficial aspect of it when it was initially created that lends itself to how whites responded to the Black Panthers and other political movements in the Black community. But it's actually been Black artists, storytellers, writers, and comic book collectors who over the decades have been really pulling in this character and making it more relatable in one way or another. Even up until the marriage with Storm and so on and so forth. So you have all of this happening, right? But what they do in the movies is they take this character and they, diminish his intelligence and give it to his little sister, right? So the very first time we get a live action Black Panther is after 60 odd years of waiting to see it. First time we actually get it, the majority of his powers are given to his sister. And when I say his powers, his intellect. So it's kind of like watching a Superman movie where Lois Lane has his super strength and his flight. You really want to watch that? Anyway, so that's what happens in the Black Panther. His intelligence is given to his little sister, and that takes away, especially considering that the Panther himself was into, science and into mathematics, and he was a STEM guy. What better motivation for Black boys, particularly in elementary school, than a Black male, brilliant character who's a master of STEM, who creates projects and whatnot? How impactful would that have been? Right? But anyway, it's taken away. By the time you get to the second movie, they decide to take advantage of the death of Chadwick Boseman, right? And remove Panther altogether. And by removing him altogether and then giving it, again, the title to his sister, you can see across both movies this obvious agenda to replace him, which, led to a lot of protests behind the scenes. But in terms of what actually makes it to the screen, it's a diminishment of Black men. And I would also argue, if you go back and watch the review we did on my channel of both films, I make the argument that Black men in general were demeaned and dismissed in both films. Much more fervently in the second, but still nonetheless there. So that in and of itself is, in my opinion, a blueprint or a roadmap to how we can understand DEI as Black men, as it pertains to heterosexual Black men in particular. The idea coming out of intersectionality is that because we're so somehow, quote unquote, privileged by gender, meaning we have penises like white men, we must be honorary white men, and thus treated as honorary white men by Black women, white women, and even LGBTs in the discussion in DEI culture. In the hierarchy of DEI culture, Black men are not necessarily regarded as significant because we're males, we're men. and we're heterosexual in that regard, and thus must be part of the oppressive patriarchal agenda. Yet, these movements are birthed out of the deaths of heterosexual Black men. So you have this contradiction there. And yet, out of all of it, no matter how many millions come about, when you look at the hiring rates, when you look at the promotion rates, when you look at the graduation rates, none of these rates benefit Black males. The very demographic who's died to been reproduced, who died, and you would think it actually benefit from all these movements that are designed, at least in theory, to promote the very people who have been excluded from competition, excluded from being able to be in the space to, push their presence. As Black men, they get ignored. So whether we're talking about in film, whether we're talking about in college acceptance rates, whether we're talking about employment rates, and whether we're talking about government or private, we find Black men at the bottom in these spaces. Now, that's not to say that Black men have just accepted that and that's it. Black men have made choices to go into their own industries. But in this particular episode of my show, we're looking specifically at how DEI treats Black men. And so when you look at the discussion, when you look at who's in these positions, when you look at who's doing these jobs and who are these DEI folk advocating for, doesn't tend to be the very Black men whose deaths sparked these whole industries. And so again, I said this is very much akin to the next presidential election. What I meant by that, if you're not familiar with the show and you haven't heard me say it before, Black men are growing increasingly indifferent. Now, for the most part, statistically speaking, we still tend to vote majority Democrat, right? You're hearing more and more rhetoric about both Black men and women moving more to the right of the dial, so on and so forth. I, as you know, am an independent. I'm more interested in whichever candidate is willing to meet our agenda and meet our needs. But my point here is that you're hearing more rhetoric about people moving right in the Black community. But for Black men, the last few elections, there's been a growing indifference. And the indifference is because when you start talking about going right or left, Black men have no particular allegiance to either, even though we have statistically demonstrated one to the left. There's an increasing, I don't know if it's really as much a push to the right as it is, an absconding from both, and a willingness to entertain the right, not necessarily out of ideological, adherence, but more so just to try another option. But at the end of the day, I think more Black men are really just kind of withdrawing from the process altogether. They're abstaining. I think that's the biggest group that we're going to see kind of happen in this next presidential election. And it's for the same reasons that I say you hear a lot of Black men indifferent about DEI, because neither has really affected us in any positive way, either way. Right? Republicans, Democrats, they haven't gone out of their way for Black men in any significant manner. Democrats have gone further to identify Black women as the demographic they wanted to focus on when addressing the Black community, which in a way is another smack to the face of Black men. So I think you're seeing a growing disregard, a growing disinterest, a growing lack of investment because none of those groups have invested in Black men. And that indifference comes about, or as I should say, is most visible when you hear people crying about, whether it's Donald Trump being elected or the diminishing number of DEI offices, although there's some debate with that. I'll show you in a second. Black men are not leading the charge to complain about that. Why? They're not benefiting from it in any significant way from what we can tell. The focus is on other groups. And the main reason for that focus being on other groups, I argue, is the hierarchy that comes about from intersectionality. Right? Once framed around Black female subjectivity, now framed in a much more generic way that seems to put white femininity as the crucial factor in determining and interpreting what that DEI practice should be focused on. So white women are in positions to make those decisions, and kind of follow suit from there. Hold on, this is, oh, there it is. All right. So I thought this one was interesting as well. Wanted to share this a little bit so we can look at another dimension of the issue. And so this is actually a 2022 piece that you'll find in AEI.org, right? By Robert Cherry. Affirmative action helps Black immigrants, but not Black Americans. So you have another dimension to this issue, right? Another dimension to the issue where we start to see when you really start to control for race, when you control for gender, when you control for age, when you control for class, when you control for sexuality, and now when you control for nationality in that sense, you see a kind of diminishing position for most particularly ADOS men. Right? So Cherry says, at my college, many departments offer modest awards for the best Black students. College rejected one department's selected winner, however, because the student was Jamaican. Students of recent Caribbean or African immigrants do not qualify. This administrative decision points to a conundrum for colleges: how to respond to Black immigrant students' superior performance on average compared to those Black students who trace their ancestry to the antebellum period. The immigrant students' superior performance has resulted in their disproportional representation in the most selective schools. Well, let me say something about that very quickly. And I've seen this happen even at Fresno State, right? One of the things that happened is that the students organized a number of years ago, I'd say about 2015, and they began to push for increased numbers of Black Americans to be brought into the campus, right, to be accepted. Now, the argument made was that they were competing with other CSU systems. So there was an argument about how much Fresno could do as far as recruiting Black students and not compete with other California state universities, right? And so that became a big argument in and of itself. And what the university did in response was overnight dramatically increase, according to them, the number of Black students they brought in. And they controlled the reports about those students until the last minute. So by the time we actually start to see the data around it, you started to see a decreasing number of African Americans, and you started to see an increasing number of Black immigrants. And from there, the university reported it as an increase in Black students, right? But the divergence there kind of swept under the rug that African American students were being diminished in number altogether. So they were able to publicly say, we got more Black students, shut up. And they did, for all intents and purposes. Let's see. Let me continue with the piece. Where did I leave off here? All right. This outcome was first highlighted in 2004 when Black Harvard law professor Lanny Guinier and Henry Louis Gates Jr., chairman of Harvard's African American Studies Department, said that somewhere between 1/2 and 2/3 of the Black Harvard students were West Indian and African immigrants or their children, or to a lesser extent, children of biracial couples. A few years ago, Jeffrey Cord reported first and second generation Black immigrants comprised 41% of all Black students at Ivy Leagues. He lamented the large numbers of African immigrants on American college campuses, coupled with the remarkably small numbers of Native Blacks on those same campuses, calls into question the effectiveness of America's affirmative action programs. While affirmative action started as a system to right the wrongs of slavery and institutional anti-Black racism, helping wealthy immigrants who weren't here for those struggles doesn't serve any of the program's original intentions. So we start out by talking about white women and the role they play in the dynamic. We can even talk about the gender divide within affirmative action in regard to men and women, because when you had the double minority framework, women could be, interpreted as Black women could be interpreted as both Black and female. So even though you have the bulk of affirmative action going to white women, then you have a short hierarchy between Black women and Black men during the affirmative action era, where Black women are seen as a double minority, Black men not so much. And now they're kind of incorporating this shift by corporations and universities toward, because I'm not arguing that there's anything wrong with Black immigrants being there, but the question is, are universities using resources and targeting African immigrants, Caribbeans, and using resources that were supposed to be earmarked for African Americans? That's kind of the question on the table in this particular piece. Response of selective colleges was twofold. First, affirmative action was no longer justified as compensation for slavery and institutional racism, but solely for its potential impact on diversity. Second, and somewhat paradoxically, most selective schools stopped reporting on the ethnicity of their Black student population. Indeed, Todd Hamilton's 2019 book, Immigration and the Remaking of Black America, does not make a single reference to the Black immigrant student share at Ivy League colleges, including his own at Princeton. Right? So there's a shift from affirmative action being identified as a response to slavery and institutional racism. And then from there, this hiding of reporting by institutions. It continues. This lack of data became an issue at Cornell in 2017 when Black students demanded that affirmative action be reserved for students who could trace their ancestry back at least 3 generations. They noted that Cornell does not ask those who identify as Black how many generations their family lived in the United States. Under this system, children of immigrants from Africa or the Caribbean who identify as Black count. In a 2021 interview, a descendant of slavery, Mariah Norman, discussed how immigrants or children of immigrants dominate the Black student environment at Harvard. She pointed to the Nigerian Students Association that claims 200 members, suggesting that 1/3 of Harvard's Black student body is in the club. More than 15 Black affinity groups exist on the campus, like the African Students Association and the Caribbean Club. And while the Black Student Association encompasses all, there wasn't an organization solely for Black students like Norman until students got together in 2021 and formed one. Norman believed that nothing would change until Harvard started reporting on the ethnic composition of its Black student population. Let's see. Affirmative action policies increasingly serve an affluent immigration population. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see something. Okay, never mind. Affirmative action policies increasingly serve an affluent immigrant population. One more reason for the Supreme Court to reject the continuation of such policies. In addition, a comprehensive Carnegie Foundation study conducted by sociologists Stephen Cole and Eleanor Barber found that a large share of Black students who had entered Ivy League colleges hoping to major in the sciences did not wind up doing so because of low freshman grades. Reflecting their weaker academic backgrounds, researchers found that Black students were more likely to pursue science fields successfully if they had attended state or historically Black colleges. The Law School Admissions Council documented that among the 178 law students surveyed, less than 10% of Black students had first-year grades higher than their median white grade. Just as importantly, developmental policies that prepare promising Black students can help more to meet the skills and demands they face. They'll face. The Army uses such policies to prepare Black applicants who seek admissions to officers training programs at West Point. The American Economics Association runs summer programs and it goes from there. Unfortunately, most social justice advocates have given up on policies that would enable Black students to meet necessary skill standards. Instead, they stress affirmative action programs, even though a large share of beneficiaries don't belong to the demographic groups the original designers of this policy had in mind. The Supreme Court should end race-based affirmative action policies so that more effective strategies can be pursued to address college racial disparities. But he doesn't go into detail as to what those are. Nevertheless, even though we're talking about DEI, I think there's such a strong relationship affirmative action in terms of the history of it, in terms of which demographics have been able to absorb it and benefit most from it. And I think in that regard, it's another question about how that impacts this whole issue around Black men. The last one, I'll just be brief, and then I'll invite people to come up and comment, give their thoughts about this whole issue. So this last one, is dated April 8th of this year. All right. Our company's quiet quitting DEI. This comes from the Good Men Project. And basically what they argue is, despite what many people would think, especially with what's going on with Disney and Marvel and so on and so forth, this article is arguing that DEI is still growing. It's not dying. We've heard recently in the news of companies that have been cutting their DEI programs in the last 6 to 7 months, most particularly. But this article is arguing that it's continuing to grow. Hold on. It says, so despite what, let's kind of start it from this line here. Despite what these stories suggest, in reality, DEI is growing according to the new Littler study, says more than half of U.S. executives say their organizations have expanded their diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies over the past year, despite an increased backlash against broader diversity initiatives. 57% of C-suite executives in the U.S. said they had grown their diversity commitments over the past 12 months, even as 59% report growing opposition to diversity programs in the U.S. following the Supreme Court's decision to roll back affirmative action college admissions policies last June. 91% of C-suite leaders say that SCOTUS rulings have not lessened their prioritization of DEI. Right. So I'm not going to, go through this whole article, but as I said, all of the articles I've shown are linked in the description box if you're interested in going further. I'm going to put the link to come up in the chat and we can talk a little bit about this. So again, primary focus for me of this question of DEI is its absence of emphasis on Black men, most particularly heterosexual Black men, and most particularly ADOS Black men. Right? You tend to find that when every new qualification comes into the equation, it diminishes the emphasis on an already ignored demographic who, at the same time, are the spark behind many of these industries popping up in the first place. So the question becomes, as DEI becomes more and more of a political issue, to what extent are Black men going to be concerned about it? Right? Shout out to Leon. He says, I had this convo in a Discord. An Indian asked why Black men don't support DEI. I told him why, and he replayed everyone at Harvard. He replayed everyone at Harvard are African immigrants, Black women, I think he's saying. Hold on. PK Angel. Can you hear me? PK Angel. I don't think your sound is working. I can't hear you. Oh, well, let's actually turn it on here. Oh, I think your sound isn't working, so you might have to get that going. So if you're interested in coming up, the link is in the chat. You have anything you want to say on this issue of DEI? See Marcus in the house. What's good, Marcus? Jehudi in the house. Let's see. Yeah, PK is saying he's having connection, or PK is having connection. Okay, we got Leon. What's good with you, Leon? Can you hear me?
Nothing, man. Yeah. Had a day off. I went and handle some business. But yeah, I had a few conversations about DEI with, I'm not gonna say the Discord, but I had a few Indians ask me about it, and they from India, they Brahmins too at that. But I told them, more likely it's not gonna affect y'all because y'all front runners for everything right now. But when it comes to American Black men, we're not getting served through none of those things, not even affirmative action. And he was a college student at Harvard, and he was like, well, yeah, I read affirmative action. He was like, yeah, most women and white women benefit from it. I was like, yeah, if you're doing a project, you're starting in the right direction. It's like none of this really benefits Black guys, so it's kind of hard for us to sit down and try to push for something that we're not benefiting from. But we had about an hour and a half conversation on it,
right?
And they're fully aware of the representation is mostly Nigerians and other Africans,
so
and a small party of Black women.
So you find the same. You have this kind of situation where the idea of people who have been traditionally left out getting support. Black men are not opposed to the idea. We just know the implementation doesn't generally include us. So we don't get excited or depressed either way. We're really kind of indifferent to a lot of this. And so when you say, and I don't know if you, in the last 6 months, if you've heard people online start to run around like their hair is on fire because DEI positions are being dropped, you rarely saw Black men really even weighing in on this.
Yes. That's how I view it too. Like I bootstrapped myself through college, so it was nothing there. But if I wanted to work or get a student loan, like I had no services, it was just bootstrap. And I think one of the major things is just like I told him, he was doing a project on it. He told me how long did affirmative action work for people, and I just told him to read what Clarence Thomas said, and it was about 2.5 years to 3 years before they changed that over around the 70s, where they started adding, after the immigration bill of 1965. So I gave them good directions to go in to understand how, it was formed and how it worked at first, but it lasted for Black guys primarily about 4 years. And that's my opinion of it, just how affirmative action ended up working after a few years and everything else.
I appreciate that. I want to bring in a couple other brothers. The first one I want to bring in, I haven't seen this brother in a minute, but he has been on the Onyx show some years ago, but it's good to see him. What's up, Leroy Moore? How you doing, man?
Hey, Dr. Johnson, what's up, man? How you doing?
Oh man, this brother is a tireless advocate on. Well, I'm gonna let him break it down. Y'all gonna hear him if you're not familiar. It's been a while since he's been on the show. It's good to have you back. I want to hear your thoughts on this whole issue. My argument has been that many Black men are different because we haven't seen, whether it's affirmative action or more lately DEI, advocate for Black men in any significant way. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I've always said that DEI is a joke. It goes back to 1980s where we had a lot of outreach programs. My father was in outreach programs. And those outreach programs were mostly women. And that was in the 80s and the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
Now, and then we get this DEI. It's still it's a recycle of the 1980s.
Yeah.
And most of the positions that I see, especially with people with disabilities, are white women talking about race issues. It's like, what the hell is this? As you know, I'm getting my PhD. I can't even get on the broadcast. You're talking about DEI and disability and Black men with disabilities.
Right.
I'm right. I'm doing this PhD, and I don't see any Black disabled men on campus.
Well, tell me this: how would you grade DEI on disability by itself before we even get to Black folk? Like, because I rarely hear them actually talk about that. Is that
they really don't talk about it. Even when they do it, it's white folks.
Oh, okay.
So when they do talk about it, it's disabled white women.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Black people, no, they don't really talk about it.
I appreciate that. Any other thoughts you want to weigh in on in regard to this subject? Anything else that comes to mind?
I'm just tired of the cycle. We've been here before in the 80s. It's a program. We don't want a program. We want our rights. Our justice. We don't want a program that's going to be cut, because we all know that the program's going to be cut. They cut the same thing in the 80s with outreach. They cut that in the late 80s. So it's the same cycle that we see constantly.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for that. I want to bring in, I'm going to bring people in the conversation that in the order they came in. So I'm going to bring in Dead Set. Dead Set, what's good with you, man?
Shizzle, drizzle, drizzle. That's not all I got to say. But yeah, on this subject,
go ahead with
it. The area that I focus on in DEI is usually the entertainment, especially when it comes to graphics. And the funny thing, the thing that I'm observing, and we observed this with affirmative action, is that the white guys, they get angry over it. And then the first thing they do is they blame Black people.
Yeah.
Which I have to go back and tell them, I said, well, wait a minute, dude. Number one, y'all came up with these policies. Number two, we're not benefiting from them. So I don't even know why y'all are blaming us.
Right.
So maybe you need to go back to your masters and then ask them what's going on, because we don't have anything to do with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the second thing is that one of the many reasons, I can even say it's the main reason why a lot of companies is pulling out, is because of money.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It's never worked. And entertainment has never been, when it comes to putting out entertainment, it's never been an equality or representation type of thing. Because what we do know that is true about the viewer is that they don't really care about representation so much when it comes to a lot of the media that we put out. They just want a good time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are sometimes if ever there was a white Black Panther, I'm going to be raising hell. Just straight up. I won't take nothing like that.
Well, based on where things are going, it'd be a white female Black Panther. So.
Exactly. So, yeah, but when it comes to things such as established properties, such as what happened with The Little Mermaid, and, I was explaining to this young woman that, we're talking about a classic. This is a Hans Christian Andersen classic.
Okay.
So obviously, I understand why white people will be mad culturally over, you know, race bending Little Mermaid. So I think that where I stand and where I'm protesting against this stuff, usually trolling in the commentary when they're talking about DEI and they say stuff like "didn't earn it." I say, yes, DEI stands for "didn't earn it." Now talk to your white women; they didn't earn it.
And you're hitting on some key issues, man, because nowhere is this more apparent than online. You know, as a geek, you know, I'm following the Marvel stuff, I'm following the Disney stuff, just keeping my eye on it. And you're right, I'm seeing this increasing this population of white men who are speaking on this, and they're more hostile, they're getting upset. And of course, you're right, they've attributed it to black folk. Meanwhile, black men are standing on the sidelines just watching the shit go back and forth, because it's like, you know, we haven't been included. I mean, we're said to be the inspiration, but we don't benefit from it. We don't have much say in it. Brothers aren't, you know, significantly hired in it. We broke down the numbers of who's actually working in many of these positions. And I think all that's really started for us is just kind of an indifference, you know. So, you know, it's we're looking at white male hostility. We're looking at black female hostility about where these positions are going. And for us, we're just kind of like, you know, if it continues, it continues. If it dies, it dies. You know, it doesn't really change much for us.
Yeah, it's really just business as usual. Yeah.
Go ahead.
This ain't nothing new. This ain't nothing new. It's business as usual. We've seen this play out over and over again. Yeah. So you know, I will maintain my trolling rights, and everywhere I see it, I'm going to troll them.
Right.
And they're going to delete my comments, but there's going to be a few takers, and that's all I need.
Well, we saw this being aimed, and this is where I'll bring Ian into the conversation. We saw this DEI critique being aimed at the mayor. What's the city where the ship hit the bridge? I forget what.
That's Baltimore.
Baltimore. So you had a young brother mayor over there, and so he kind of got blamed as being a DEI hire in some kind of way, even though he didn't have anything to do with the ship. None of that had anything, you know. But we're seeing that kind of just blatantly used to attack people. And yet again, you know, black men are on the sidelines of this battle. Ian, weigh in on this, man. Give us your thoughts about DEI, affirmative action, or anything else we've covered.
Yeah. What's up, guys? Hello,
Good,
Doc.
man.
So, I mean, for me, DGS did a stream earlier, where he was going at a couple against the truth as I know it, a couple guys in the space and why they always trolling them, so on and so forth. But one key point that he pointed out was how for a long time until civil rights, black men were graduating high school maybe at a 25 to 30% clip, right? Okay. Affirmative action was essentially the cure-all. Want to be a cure for actually boosting up black men, ADOS black men who you know, historically had been left out of the economic incentive and educational incentive government handouts. So when we talk about DEI is just an extension of affirmative action, as we know, was usurped by white women, right? You know, because you know that story, how that story goes. I forgot her name, Margaret, whoever. She tells that story, but essentially, DEI is just an extension of as you explained so aptly, how intersectional feminism, right, basically was able to shoehorn themselves in to get the benefits of what essentially was meant for black men. Because we know with the Moynihan Report, we know with the Kerner Commission, all of that was geared towards assessing the damage of how America has left black men out of the economic progress, right? And so DEI again is just another extension of that. And it's funny because when we talk about affirmative action and DEI, I mean it's so weird with that that commentary that I spoke about with BGS. He talked about how in the movie with Denzel Washington, Fences, right? So so he was illiterate, okay? So his wife could read, And you mean to tell me for 20 fucking years,
yeah,
this chick couldn't get up the fucking nerve to teach her own man how to read?
Oh, okay.
Yo, that's wild, bro. And what I'm saying is, I've heard over the last couple of years, as we've been having these discussions, about reparations and different things or whatever, I've been hearing a lot of stories, black women coming up and saying, I'm talking about educated black, talking about their father couldn't read and shit. And I'm like, you can't tell me there was not some chick in the family, you know what I'm saying, that couldn't have taught your pops how to read. You feel me? And so it's for me, I really don't give a damn about DEI and affirmative action, because of the fact is it was a giveaway to white women, but I really don't care, because black women, they didn't have no problem with it, because they thought it was going to benefit them. And what I'm saying is, if you can't even teach your own husband how to read, fuck any benefits that you're going to get as a black woman from DEI or affirmative action. So I just land there.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I think at some point we're going to see a pushback against it, a diminishment of it, especially if Trump gets into office. There's a landmark lawsuit recently that took place that really, is argued to, give opportunity for serious pushback, especially in regard to men, white men in particular. So we're going to see where this goes. But my whole argument, basically, which is not, a huge one, it's just simply, as this battle continues, I think you're going to find many black men standing at the sidelines just watching, because I don't think we really have buy-in either way. But we got Marcus up here, who I ain't seen in a minute. What's good with you, man?
What's going on, man?
Yeah.
Am I loud and clear?
Yeah, you clear. What's good, okay, man? Weigh in on this, man. What are your thoughts? I saw you in the comments, but I couldn't keep up with the discussion, so I don't know, where things were. What's good?
Chilling, man. I've been peeping a little bit of the discussion, man. I've discussed stuff like this on a number of occasions. Everybody's cool with us not getting none. Let's just establish that first, right? Because nobody's arguing. I mean, outside of our group, nobody's arguing on behalf of black men, outside of black men. And then when black men do argue, everyone has a problem with it. And just let me be specific. I do mean American black men, American straight black men. Okay. Even on my channel, like anytime I point to any of this type of stuff, everyone has a problem with it. Black women flip out, black men and whoever from other countries flip out, and then it becomes this, oh, you hate us nonsense. At the end of the day, we picked cotton here. We built this country. We did this. We did that. Everyone else benefited from what it's just like what you said earlier. A lot of this stuff is stemming from the things that's happening to us. And then when the cake get cut, everybody get a slice but us. Then if we complain we ain't getting a slice, then we hate somebody.
Right.
And what's going to happen is there's going to be the hate that hate created, because at the end of the day, if we can't get or we can't benefit from pretty much the thing that was created for us because of our condition, and it's supposed to be for they're giving it to everyone else, we're going to have an issue with all these other groups. And then they're going to cry about how we throwing rocks at them. And I'm pretty much over it now. I'm pretty much new to this, like just watching your video, the whole DEI thing. Man, I've been out of the loop for a minute. I've been busy, bro. Like that's why y'all ain't been seeing me do my thing. I moved and now I'm in this new space and I'm coming back. So
you still international with it?
I haven't been out of the country, but I moved from one spot to another. I'm still on the West Coast, but I had to move a bunch of stuff, man. I moved.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? So, pretty much what I'm laughing at the comments. What I'm saying is, people can't get mad at us because we won ours, man. You understand? Like, understand that everything that you have, you're benefiting from what we fought for.
Yeah. That's you're talking about black male blood.
Right. Black male blood, black male death, black male bodies. You can't get mad. We want a piece of what's created behind that.
Right.
And mad it is being given to you. And you didn't deal with that. You didn't. You didn't. So, you know, when you started to speak on the ADOS aspect of this, I started to watch the chat. They go, oh, I ain't in Harvard. I ain't get nothing. I did not. And that's always the retort. What you didn't get. If the stat says that most of the black men, you know, that's benefiting from this, or most black people, or most people benefiting from these things are not the ADOS straight black man, I don't care what you personally didn't benefit from it.
See, what I'm looking at, and this is my argument with intersectionality, I think the more they include groups, especially, you know, white women were the first to kind of kick in that door, but the more groups that get included, the more invisible black men become. And I think institutions, corporations, government, you know, all of these different institutions where you're seeing these resources being implemented are participating in that, and nobody's pushing back against it. And the thing that I find interesting, you don't even see black men, you know, protesting it. Black men are just kind of saying, you know what, I'll get it another way. I'll figure it out. Now, whether that's good, bad, successful or not, I think that's kind of the posture you kind of have. Because even in the university, you know, you don't hear black men raising a lot of protest about whether or not DEI, you know, affirms them or advocates for them. You don't hear it. You know, black men for the most part are trying to figure it out in their own way, because, you know, at the end of the day, I don't think any of us really feel like this is going to work to our benefit in any significant way. I can be wrong,
but you know, you know, to Marcus's point, to your point, the problem that I'm having is that we're dead set, because dead set is not ADOS, right? And that's not a bad thing, all right? We're all black men. I support black men, but the idea that you feel that you have to argue with white men, right? When in fact white men know the truth. First of all, but see, the problem when you're not ADOS black male, you don't understand that the white men are basically gaslighting you to even make these statements, because they know that black men have not benefited from DEI. They know that. So if they pulling your coattails, it's just because maybe you don't know that the white man is on some bullshit, because he knows for sure that there ain't been no black man sitting next to him in the fucking driver's seat of wherever the fuck he was at, right? But you can be sure, just like we saw in Hidden Colors and the different movies and things like that, black women have been sitting next to their ass, right? They have, and they willingly let these black women in, right? And so it's kind of disingenuous when white men are making any statements with regard to that, because they willingly, on purpose, allow black women to sit in seats that they were not given to black men. So when you have that discussion with them, just tell them, you know what I'm saying, it's your fault that you wanted that fucking bedwin. So I'll land there.
And I think it's important we remember this is strategically done. We have these institutions who are not only using gender, they're using nationality, right? They're using this whole question of how black men are, who we are. They're using these different identities against us. So in that regard, it's not an accident. It's not just happening arbitrarily. This is very purposeful. And
absolutely.
White women were just the first in that iteration, and they tend to be in positions of authority, but it has continued on, and these institutions are using it. And that's why I gave the example about Fresno State, because I've witnessed how institutions go about doing it. You know, there's no, when I push back about the numbers of black males at the university, the answer is always, well, the number of black people are going up, and black people, you know, there's always more women than men. And then there's this whole question of where do ADOS brothers fit in that? And it doesn't ever come up unless I force it. But this is what we're experiencing in a lot of different arenas. And I just want us to be hip to the game. But I do think a lot of black men are hip enough to know that I'm not really going out on a limb to fight this battle because it doesn't really benefit me in the end analysis, right? But Marcus, you were going to say something else. Go ahead.
Okay, so they do know what's going on. I'm not listen, I'm from Flatbush, Brooklyn. I grew up around Jamaicans. I see, shout out to Jamaica SYSBM. I'm going to speak to a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing jump off in the chat, because let me explain something to like the Caribbean guys that are in the chat. I grew up around you. I've been to your countries. I know all about your culture, all of that. You can't BS me. I grew up in your shit, bro. You understand what I'm saying? So I know the conversations that take place when Americans aren't around. I know that you guys wave your flags and this and that on Labor Day. See, you're Jamaican as shit on Labor Day, but every other day of the year, you're black and you want to benefit and be black with us. No, it doesn't work like that. When this is the thing, this DEI shit, like I see Adrian, shout out to Adrian. He says, we're willing to burn DEI because it doesn't benefit us. It's the same way that, people from the islands and the continent want to burn down reparations because it doesn't benefit them. It's the same thing, right? But both things derive from our trauma, our pain, our struggle. Holla at your colonizer is what I always say. If you're Jamaican, holla at the British. Holla at the British about what they owe you. If you come from the islands or if you come from the continent, holla at the colonizer. This has nothing to do with you. You understand what I'm saying? So yeah, you might go through some of the stuff that we go through, but just understand that everything that you get here is because of us. Now, if you don't like that, hate it and hate me along with it. I don't care, but it's real. It's real shit. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, go ahead. What?
Nah, sometimes I get pissed off with this conversation because we all black when there's money on the table. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? But when the money's off the table, I'm from Jamaica, I'm from Trinidad, I'm from here. Grab something and wave, and you waving your flag shit. That's all I'm saying, man. At the end of the day, man, I'm of the opinion that these things were never meant to benefit us. It was only meant to look as if, it's like benign neglect. It was only meant to look as if the government was going to do something for black men because they gave it to everybody else. Period.
Everybody else. Exactly. And they figured out how to make it legal. They figured out how to matter of fact, not only legal, they figured out how to make it to where if you didn't include this new hustle where everybody benefits over black men, you might be sued. I mean, the way it's in regard to Title VII, it's framed around something that, corporations, businesses, institutions have to participate in, but it's leaned toward everybody but us. Shout out to, I'm going to bring in Angry Old Dude and then PK Angel after that. What's going on, man?
What's up? First off, it's a pleasure, man. I'm 70 years old. I think the first time I ever communicated with you when you were talking about single dads. I say that because I actually was a single dad. But I'm going to tell you a real life story.
Is that Otis?
Oh, yeah, Ian, you're the reason I
didn't know that was Otis. Man, what's up, man?
Don't treat me like you're on X Spaces. I want to get this out because I don't want to waste the time. I want to tell you a true experience with me. I'm 70 years old. If I'm lucky this July, I'll be 71. Mm-hmm. But the time period you're talking about, I grew up in Yorktown, Virginia, and I'm glad this is recorded because it's actually biographical. But I'm going to try to quickly get through this. The time period that you're talking about with the passage of the Civil Rights Bill, I used to sweep the floor at this barbershop, and a lot of old farmers used to come in. But if the area I tell you I'm from, Yorktown, Virginia, you understand, most of the educated people that came in worked at Hampton Institute, Norfolk State, or Langley Air Force Base at the time when NASA research was going on, and most of the black people were getting jobs because affirmative action comes in. So what I was making my hustle as a kid is most of the farmers were uneducated. I heard Ian bring this up. That's why I want to tell you a true story. Most of them couldn't read. So they got most of their information from what? The educated people that were reading the Jet magazines, the and all of the black publications, Detroit Defender, all of this stuff. But because I could read, when they were having their arguments, naturally the educated ones would shout down the farmers. But I got my hustle by when they lose an argument, I would pick up the article and read it out loud. So I'm getting hustles at quarters, 50-cent pieces and stuff to read to the uneducated ones. So the next Saturday, when the same thing starts, now these old Negroes who can't read, but they have ironclad memories.
Right.
And to the point, I carried a dictionary. So I want to skip to this point. Once I started reading to them, within months of having that conversation again, this is when I watched the inaugural speech of LBJ at Howard University.
Okay.
And he talked about the tennis shoes and shit. Now, I'm 10 years old, 10, 11 years old. I was born in 53. So this is 64, but I don't turn actually 11 years old until in July. So I'm 10 years old if this is happening. Now, by the fall, when I started school, those same farmers, when they finished the argument, this is what they told me. And here's the important part. They said, boy, I don't give a damn what any of them educated Negroes say about this goddamn giving you something. Let me tell you what's going to happen. When they change that shit to women and minorities, what's going to happen is if you got a pie and it's 10 slices, goddamn it, the women going to get, you ain't getting but one slice of the 10. That remember 10% set aside. These is old farmers talking to me now. And I got aged in school. I think I'm smart, but they tell you, I don't care what none of them niggas tell you. In the end, you're gonna have to share your piece of pie with the white man's mama, sister, daughter. See where I'm going with this? Uneducated niggas put in a condensed form what I live to see. They told the truth because all of you are talking about it. And I'm gonna shout out to this.
How did they know all that?
Let me finish here and I'm gonna let you talk. I didn't put this together until I got assaulted by Antonio Moore about being old when I called into the show you're talking about.
What?
When it started, when he booted out Iron Me and took over because Cosby was backing him. I'll give you some tea here. So I call in, and the first thing Antonio Moore says to me, that's what's wrong with old ass niggas. I'm saying, hold on. Age ain't got nothing to do with being a fool. Why? How you? And number one, if you're gonna insult a human being by starting off with old nigga, you don't even know what life is all about. That's the kind of nigga I am. But I'm gonna tell you, I take the word you do because you put the scholarship to it. I'm gonna shut up and listen.
No, but Otis, what is your opinion of how those farmers knew this?
Well, I tell you, you asking the wrong one here. I told you Yorktown, Virginia. I'm right here where what you call Point Comfort now. I mean Fort Monroe now. That was Point Comfort. I heard people. I grew up with people that survived that, and they tell you it was a safe haven for contrabands during the war, but actually ended up being a damn cesspool because they didn't want to feed the Negroes. It cost too much. And all down now, and 12 miles from me, where I was born and raised, you got Mallory Street. That was named after one of the first three contrabands. That's what they called the blacks because they were taking labor from the South. So I tell you, it's lost cause people. It's the same people that when I hear people like Mark Carter and the Disruptor telling you to go over to the GOP side, I can tell you as a nerd, if you read the Powell memo from 1971, who was once a damn mayor of the former Confederacy, which is Richmond, Virginia, about 45 miles up the road from me. I live at the Yorktown battlefields. If you read over that, you'll find out Powell laid out everything that you see it, from ownership of a black ass chief justice and making it legal, to money influence, to actually corporations becoming persons, from finding out that you end up with a whole bunch of people bragging about the CBC that's got 50-some members, but you find out they ain't much different than AIPAC and the Israelis. They got dual allegiance because most of them come from the islands.
Okay.
Don't ask me. I'll give it all to you. Much love. I appreciate the work you do, though, T.
Oh, man, I appreciate you. I didn't even realize that was Otis, man. It's good to see you, man.
And look, I get beat up because you know, when I hear y'all talking about ADOS, I stopped using that terminology, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm just a straight up country guy, but I'm probably the only black man in America that just happened to call in, and I tell you the kind of nigga I am. I served on Titan II combat crew in the Air Force. I thought my dad was a son of a bitch till I got selected to go on that crew. And the first time I got in trouble with the Air Force is when they tried to convince me, because I was the first black person to do that. My squadron commander called me in and told me I wasn't being a good patriot. And I told him, I think you're putting too much pressure on me because the system been active for 15 years, and I know damn well I can't be the first black man qualified to do it. That's the kind of nigga I am. I don't believe in appeasing white folks. When you ask me what's wrong, I'm telling you. Let me finish with this. I gave Yvette Cornell some advice, and I stopped associating with her because she literally told me that she didn't need no advice from me. When she tell me throw a chair, I need to pick up a chair. And right then I knew what I'm gonna tell y'all. You can claim you're in reparations, but anybody that thinks they own a movement has got more ego than I can deal with. Much love to you.
All right, man. Thanks for coming through. Appreciate that word. I'm gonna give.
You can drop me out because I'm something to keep talking. I have a good friend that finally taught me how to roll my own blunt, so I'm in one of them moods tonight.
All right, man. He said, take it easy, man. Shout out to Otis, man. I'm gonna give. I'm still going in order. So PK Angel, and then Leroy came back through. So PK Angel, go ahead and drop a word, man. What's your thoughts on this?
Hey, what's going on, bro? Hopefully you can hear me. Am I coming in okay?
Perfectly. Go ahead.
I appreciate it. So the history of DEI, running back to affirmative action is something that a lot of people don't actually properly look at and put it and draw the distinction in between how it benefits women over men specifically. And a lot of people here in the Black manosphere have done some research in accordance with that and have uncovered and brought to the public that right now the way that it functions is a tool essentially to elevate women above men in its aims. That's the primary directive of the way that DEI functions. And a lot of people don't understand the long-reaching consequences that it has had an impact on Black men specifically, not only in this country, but its impacts across the large swaths of men across the world, because it's being implemented on a corporation basis by virtue of things like ESG and funding that's being done on behalf of governments across the world, as well as different NGO bodies under that same umbrella. So when we start to talk about its effects on Black men here, in home base, so to speak, what we tend to find as a group of men is that it's actually working. A lot of people don't realize this, and they don't actually put it in its proper context, but it's working as intended. Its aims are to specifically hire groups of other people, women primarily, and elevate them above men specifically, and Black men in particular. So, go ahead.
No, I'm listening to you. Go ahead.
So, unfortunately, if we want to see a change in that particular set of policy, it would be nice if there was a careful approach wherein we could actually have affirmative action benefit Black men specifically, but that doesn't seem to be by virtue of, I hate to say it because a lot of people may wane on the issue, but white supremacists views that they don't want to give it to us. They don't. And they'll go to any lengths to avoid doing so. However, if there were a way to carefully navigate it, Black men are and ought to be entitled to DEI as a specific class of people here in this country. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the aims, and it's being advanced in such a way that it's attacking men at this point. That's the aim of it. It's to destabilize men's positions to elevate women specifically above them.
Well, you know, Errol Miller. This happened in Jamaica too, with and Errol Miller. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to add to that. Errol Miller, because Dr. T, pointed us to this. Errol Miller, how the upliftment of women over in Jamaica over the Jamaican men basically was the same project. The same white supremacist project to destabilize the male so that there's no progress.
Right. It looks like something they ran in Jamaica and then and brought it over and perfected it here, because they were doing it in Jamaica in the 1800s. And Errol Miller provided documentation about even pay rates in the 1800s, showing how they were shifting jobs away from black men to Jamaican men to Jamaican women. And so you started to see it kind of played out there. So it's the same program, and it's still happening to this day. And the effect it has on the women don't look at it as these institutions are playing us against men. The women look at it as, this is magic. This is black girl magic. We're powerful. We're brave. We're incredible. We're doing these things. They don't look at it as a strategic move against the community. And so we're starting to hear a little bit of that from individual women, but collectively, no.
Well, Dr. Johnson, I really think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I really think that DEI came out of BLM. So it makes sense that DEI is only for women, because it really was a response to BLM.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard it being a direct response to BLM, but I do think there's an organic growth out of affirmative action, and of course the deaths of black men. But you want to drop one other thing. What else did you want to go into?
No, I just want to say that because it was one of the tactics from our capitalist society, whatever, that takes over movements, and they say, okay, we'll give you DEI, and so I think BLM agreed with that and think, okay, we'll take DEI as a
okay,
that that it improves whatever their movement was. So I really see it coming from BLM as though it was coming from BLM. Of course, and it only serve women,
Yeah.
But
I believe. I believe that.
Yeah, you're saying it's a continuation. I feel you.
Yeah, because they basically negotiated on our behalf for themselves. Because so when we say BLM, that a lot of folks can be considered BLM who actually weren't necessarily in the movement. A lot of academics, so on and so forth, they just took advantage of it and basically negotiated for themselves. Okay, George Floyd, black men. Okay, we'll stop the movement if you give this to black women. You feel me?
Damn.
Listen, man. Even when dudes get shot in the street and they pay the family out, who get the money?
Mm-hmm.
Who get the money? We know the answer. Nobody even got to say it.
Right.
Who get the money? It ain't the man father or the kid father. Who get the money? Who they pay out every time? Who hugging the judges?
And who's interviewed even years after to talk about the situation? It's rarely the father. Father is not remembered or acknowledged.
Right, and the father be in the picture. Trayvon Martin's father was in the picture.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, this ain't by accident, man. every time they do this type of thing, right? They play the same game. Yeah. And as soon as we say something, everybody mad. Everybody mad.
Hey, yeah.
Now then we hate people, and then we anti this and anti that.
And let me go ahead and bring in Commander Grand Negro, and then I'm going to bring in, well, shout out to Leroy, man. I guess he pulled off. Thanks for dropping that. I hope you're good, brother. Go ahead, Commander, and then I'm going to bring in Charles.
Hey, brother T.S.on, Dr. T.S.on. I want to say thank you for providing that book. I was able to use it for a couple of my classes in academia. So I just want to say that one of the topics that I discussed about was Title IX investigations. One of them was dealing with false accusations on college campuses. And what are some of the ways that they can go about investigating these type of crimes, alleged crimes, quote unquote, and also punishing women that have false accusations. And I call it the Karen Act on campus when it comes to universities and college campuses. I have it on LinkedIn. I did cite my sources, did cite you on it, and I wanted to say thank you for providing that book. It gives some great context, and it helps combat misandry, like in the academic spaces, because it's very, very thick, and they're very, very anti-Black and Negro. I would say even Negrophobic to specifically to Black men. Also, because of that book, I talked about pushing something that I was talking about pushing on the low. That there needs to be. They talk about NIL deals for those college athletes and such. There needs to be one for academia scholarships for Black young men that are doing excellence in academia. They use our faces and our likeness to attract certain college students. No different from an athlete. Right. If you excel very well in academia and get awards or stuff like that, they use you as a part of their marketing strategy to get more recruitments. Yes. So why are they not cutting NIL deals to our Negro Black brothers and sisters? So those are just some of the things that I was able to, I would love for you to add to your Title IX thing that you got in your book as one of the 17s. So that these brothers and sisters can get some money in their pocket.
Now, did you sent me both ideas in LinkedIn, or where did you send them?
They're on LinkedIn. I think I might have sent you some, but I did hashtag you. But I will send it to you personally because we follow each other on Facebook. I'm Roland.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, we follow each other on Facebook and all the majority of the platforms. But like I've been following you for years, brother. I've been supporting you on the low for years. When you had the book, I had to buy it, because you were talking about it since I was in understudy. So you have done, the book is amazing. Very easy to read. College students, you're able to use the index as your friend. The index is your friend. Right. Please utilize it. The brother has a lot of gems, especially when it comes to the Title IX, the Title VII section. You also talk about some other things as well, but one of the course that I'm in right now is an investigation. So that's what I'm getting my master's in at University of New Haven. And because of these things, because of the things that you've written in that book, I was able to get some A's in my classes. and so I don't want to hear people give me this crap saying that you can't advocate for your people. No, you're a coward, and you don't want to stand on your lineage, and you don't want to stand in the interest for your people. So you shouldn't be in higher ed. You should stay in lower ed where you belong. Because higher ed, you're supposed to build institutions. You're supposed to look out for the collective and the greater number of your people. And if you're doing
it's in the disinterest of their class position to do so. That's why they don't. By and large, that's my take on it. Now, from my perception, many of these people come from elevated class statuses, and they're trying to maintain their class advantage by directly advocating against it. By virtue of not advocating on behalf of our entire community, they try to maintain their class distinction or advantage. That's what's happening here. And so we don't realize that we have a modern day in large part a modern day bourgeois black intelligentsia. And so they're continuing essentially the same issues of the past and creating they are the buffer class. That's what they are. And the way that they maintain that is by virtue of some of these newer policies, DEI in specific. That's why they don't talk about it.
Well, you know,
And same when it comes to entertainment as well. They're working on behalf of that class position.
That's basically the
But
Divine
anyway.
Nine. You talking about the Divine Nine, basically.
Well,
Divine Nine, they the ones who got Kamala, who's not black, in office, right? Even you know, they put her off as being black. She's not nowhere near being black. She ain't got no black roots whatsoever from Africa, right?
Well, she
But
half
the Divine
Jamaican.
Nine, though, said she was black because she was going to do for black women. You feel me?
Wasn't she? Wasn't she a AKA or Delta? Did she play? She pledged, right?
She's an AKA, brother. She AKA.
Right.
She with the chucks and pearls.
The thing to keep it, shit, I remember that bullshit. But also to keep in mind, they're cutting that whole. You know, when we talk about the black intelligentsia and the bourgeois, it's also cut with gender too, because especially like if you look in the academy, a lot of women are in those gatekeeping positions. So you have dudes who are afraid of being punished for speaking out about how black men are treated, because they're up under black women who will respond to them in kind, as it were.
Well, Dr. Tiasan, when we have a culture that's developed, as we talked earlier, off educating our women over the men, of course the boule are going to be run by the gynarchy. Of course, that's going to be the controlling factor of what the boule is. It's going to be feminist based, right? Where men are getting cut out because women has essentially always been the most educated. Because in that same video where I spoke about GGS, he talked about the Mohawk conference where white people were coming out of slavery. They said, you know what I'm saying, we have a mission to educate the females, and we're not really interested in giving education to the males. So that's always been the strategy, even of the white liberal, to leave us economically frail and educationally dumb while uplifting the black female.
Hey,
It reminds me of that Biggie Smalls rhyme that he used to say, get my daughter this college plan so she won't need no man. I hated that line. I hated that line. I really did hate Biggie Smalls because of some. Yes, he did. Sky's the limit, brother.
Sky's the limit.
I'm an age baby. I'm a man of a certain age, so I remember some of these phrases being shot across over our heads, and then a lot of I was always in tune, and I was like, no, this Negro didn't know, this person in this Jamaican immigrant said this nonsense.
Hey, check this out.
Well, hold on. I gotta bring in Charles though. He's been waiting. Charles, yeah, go ahead and add in on this, man. What's your thoughts, bro?
And thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you. Still serving. That's the messed up part. Well, in a sergeant capacity, at least in the police. All right, since everybody wants it. 1, 2, 3. Woo!
Woo! Woo! You are in a unique position to weigh in on DEI, man, especially in terms of the police, security, the whole deal, man. What are your?
I have no. I might offend people because I have no experience within law enforcement, military, or the security field. I'm not an expert.
Oh shit! Here we go.
I'm not an expert, but I've worn a uniform for like 25 years. I'm only 42, so yeah, you do the math.
Uh-oh. You there? Hi, Morgan. Okay.
Should kick in about now.
There we go.
What about now, Doc?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, the college Wi-Fi just kicked in.
Okay.
Yep.
So give us your thoughts on DEI and where
Yeah,
black
just
men
getting in my
stand.
office. Well, what's the greatest trick the devil played on humanity?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't exist.
They convinced it. That's the specialty part. Okay. The specialty part is that I'm a victim too. But are you victimized to the same rate? Let me give you an example of my old department, the Baltimore Police Department. They have an initiative called 30 Foot. If you're not familiar,
you blanked out for a second. They have an initiative. What? Charles, can you hear me?
and we're back.
All right, man. So what were you saying?
Hey,
They have an
Doc,
initiative?
can you hear me?
We can
They
hear
have
you
an
now.
initiative to get, an initiative for 30% of their police department to be female.
Who does?
And remember, Baltimore's rough. Huh?
I'm having a hard time hearing you, man. Are you still?
Oh yeah, I'm still. It's just the
I think
Wi-Fi
he's
cutting in.
in his office in the car.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no, I'm actually in the office at my desk.
Oh, okay.
But they have a initiative. I'm a
I'm
desk
sorry.
jockey man now. I'm a desk jockey now, but it's the initiative 30 before 30, where they want 30% of the department to be female.
Okay.
How many in a profession which is what 90% male? So how many young men, with that initiative being taking place, how many qualified young men are going to be overlooked just to fill and to feed this monster of an initiative they have? I want you to really think about this.
Okay.
I'm not going to name names for these situations. How does a female who's on a post-only assignment, which means you have to stay there in order for you to leave the post, you have to be relieved by another officer? How do you leave? No one can find you for an hour or two. There's a shooting that happens on your post. Person ends up, being unalived. All your squad mates, your sergeant, your lieutenant, and the district commander, the major, comes there. Nobody can find you. How do you keep your job? Not only do you get to go to a detective unit, but later that same year you get to be promoted to sergeant. And if that would have been you or I, we would have been fired. We would have been suspended pending termination.
Okay.
Facts.
Yeah.
So how much of this hand out is giving everybody a hand up? And in order to promote this agenda, somebody's got to be the base. Somebody's got to be the firmament. Excuse me, the foundation. How many people have? Go ahead.
No, finish your statement.
And I was like, how many times have black men basically been at the bottom when it comes to these things? You have people committing crimes and they're getting elevated, and it's not us.
Charles,
and I'm just go ahead.
How badly do you think this will impact black males going into, policing, going into how much do you think that'll have an impact on them specifically?
You can basically see the same thing as you're seeing with education now, where she gonna need this job more than you do, type of feel. You're gonna need this so she can take care of her family and take care of herself, because you're starting out at like 65, about $70,000 you're starting. So how many times are they gonna overlook that?
Okay. All right.
So it's gonna be something interesting, because you're not gonna get you're going to get a lot of bias. You're going to see a lot of things where it's going to be an initiative instead of for young men who need work, because we're the number one when it comes to unemployment. Look who's going to be looked over. Look where a lot of the empathy. There you go. Look where a lot of the empathy is going to come from.
Okay.
You're going to have a lot of issues of when it goes back to when domestic violence was introduced. The domestic violence laws were introduced. How many times you had a female officer putting her gloves on, tell me he hit you.
Oh wow.
Tell me he hit you.
How many times, bro?
Go ahead.
No, it's interesting. I hadn't actually thought about the impact of that in terms of, you know, female officers initiating false claims, you know, more than they already occur. I hadn't you know, thought about that as a possibility. Is that something you've seen take place?
Sir, I've seen some of the most catty bullshit you could see. I've seen women, when guys were wanting not to get involved with them romantically, and he was telling the truth of how she just was spreading her wings and flying with every male officer. She put a false sexual harassment claim against him and tried to forge some text messages. But why is she fired? Where's the repercussions of terminating people who are integrity risk? Think about it. I could have a conversation with my buddy and warn him, something gets back to her, and oh, he's sexually harassing me.
Okay.
and this officer was suspended for 3 years.
Okay. Wow.
And that's not the only case. You have people cheating on their husbands. They find out they get suspended, they're moved to much more leisure post, and still are eligible for promotion.
Well, we showed earlier, when you look at the employment rates in regard to human resources, it tends to be majority female. So when you have men who are falsely accused, who are trying to go in and you know, get some type of acknowledgement of their situation, they find that they may not be as supported as other groups, most particularly women. So it's gotten to the point where I've heard over the last 20 years, men don't even often report. You know, they either just leave, go to another job, or they just kind of duck their head and keep working and just stay out of view. But I think the culture of most work environments, you find men that just don't even engage human resources beyond necessity. You know, so we're seeing men responding, but not in a participatory way. Men are pulling out. You know, but
yeah, Dr. Hasan.
Go ahead.
Can I respond from that from a security officer? Like I've been a security officer for 10 plus years. One of the things that I observe in the state of Connecticut is that they do not allow black men to become security accountants. The power of becoming a security accountant is that you can create your own firm if you are in good standing for 5 years. Remind you, I'm almost halfway of getting my master's degree. I've been putting in for account manager for God's know when, but yet still they give it to unqualified people. They don't even have degrees. They don't have experience. Some of them is mostly white men, and if they do give it to a black person, they give it to a black woman. See, and I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it 1,000, and I don't care if it sounds sexist. A black woman is not gonna. Some of these black women are not gonna talk about creating a firm, a security firm to protect the overall community. That's a man's responsibility to talk about defense, and I feel that they are blocking black men for doing what's within their right as men. So that's one example from a security perspective that I've experienced personally in the field of security.
Okay, thank you for that.
Damn.
You. Charles, can you weigh in on that at all?
Well, you got to think about it. They're coming into this workspace, not because they have a duty. It's because of work. So they want the money. That's all it's about. It's just money.
Okay. All right. Well, look, we're coming close to the 2.5 hour mark. So I want to give everybody a chance for a brief closing thought, and I'm gonna kind of lead toward the end. And we can just do it at random. Any closing thoughts about any of this?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I mean, that's very unfortunate, and for me, it seems for me, just in general, the whole integrity of the workforce has been kind of diminished by DEI. Specifically, adding Black women and women into positions where they're not necessarily, it's not really their strength, and like you said, it's just about a check. So essentially, the considerations for the standard of work is lowered, just like as we know, when to get into the police, into the academy, into the police force, into the army, the physical standards are lower, so on and so forth. But this is not just in those positions. This is across the board in all of the workforce where you need a quality control, and you need people who actually have the skills. Right. This is destroying the fabric of the actual productivity of our nation. And I want to say as well, to the point again,
Hold on.
this
Marcus, your mic is
Yeah, let me.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, and so I just wanted to say, as a brother was talking about the boule, I mean, the Divine Nine, that again, that's, as I said before, coming from, the being the most educated, the ones who could read the most, as you talked on the other shows, they're the ones who control the deed to the houses and the properties, and and all those different things, and you go back to we go back to the Caribbean again. You have the data where the slave owners who got reparations, right? Because when Britain ended the slave trade in for their particular colonies in the Caribbean, the slave owners got reparations. So did the slave owners here on the continental United States and America. But what I'm saying is 50% of those who got reparations were women in the Caribbean. You know what I'm saying? And when I say 50% of those were Black women. And some people say, they get into the colorist game. Oh, but they're just mulattoes and this. No, but see, a lot of people put on mulattoes and biracials or whatever, but it wasn't a situation where when you're talking about an elitism or a boule, it wasn't a matter of a racial consciousness within this particular light-skinned group. The consciousness, right? And this is why Black women are always pushing this colorist view, because the real consciousness, as we know from the Daughter of the Trade, comes from the female. And so the offspring, no matter what color you are, the offspring of the female who has that level of entitlement, right? And elitism, right? No matter what their color of their offspring are going to be, are going to have that sense of entitlement and just going to be taught to them by their mother. So I think when we're having those conversations about the boule and then the color of the boule, the color is secondary to the fact it was a feminist based approach to the boule movement that usually gets put on the color of your skin, but it's really about the gender. So to that point, when we're talking about DEI and all those different things like that, understand, right? The court hearing where Justice Thomas, where they had the affirmative action, race consciousness in terms of affirmative action, in terms of school admissions and so whatever. But people don't talk about the fact that it was, I think, 10 years prior to that, where the white women actually sued because they couldn't get in the school of their choice, even though they could get in some of the top schools. They the ones who ended affirmative action proper, right? But nobody talks about that, right? Nobody talks about that. So DEI comes in really to kind of shore up what was taken away, 10 to 15 years ago. And unfortunately, when I'm in these reparation spaces, you still have Black women trying to push for this DEI, even though the Supreme Court has said, based on the Constitution, it's illegal to have preferences set aside based on gender or race. And so that's why now when I'm doing reparations, I go by the freedman status, meaning, we were once a slave and then we were free, just as the Indians now who got reparations from the 5 tribes who were slave owners, they also got reparations under the freedman status and not under their color. So that's the way to go. Justice Thomas pointed it out, and another justice, freedman status, forget about race, forget about the women, let's get it. I'm done.
All right, man. Appreciate the word, good brother, and shout out to Ian as well. He was always supporting the channel in the chat, man. It's much appreciated. Have a good evening, good brother.
All right, brothers. Good to see y'all.
Peace. Closing words, anybody?
So I'm gonna say this. Shout out to Ron Neal, Dr. Ron Neal. He said something that I've kind of said a variation of. He said that gender ideology will be the downfall of this country, not race. Okay. I've said any nation that doesn't support its men deserves to fail. That goes for America. That goes for Black American culture. That goes for any culture that doesn't support its men. You deserve to fail. What's going to happen in America with this nonsense that they're doing? They're gonna dismantle this country. I mean, we can fight, we could throw bombs on everybody or whatever, but this shit is gonna implode from within. All right. All of this, giving the women everything and the letter community and all of this nonsense. And now, we're offending foreign countries with this agenda that, they got to accept the things that we accept or we won't, trade with them. We're making this it's like a world war. Like I've also said that I feel like what we're going through here is the gendered version of civil rights. And they're making this foreign policy also.
Okay.
Right. So, that's why you got all these allegiances happening outside of America to exclude America out of certain things. That's a whole other conversation. Okay. But that will be the downfall of this country. So aside of everything that we're doing in the chat with the ADOS and all, bigger than that is this. And that's why, earlier you were talking about Black men's politics. That's why, it's like we know that Republicans, they don't really rock with us, but we have no real home with the Democrats either. I'm one of those guys that, I'm like you. I'm independent.
Yeah, there's not enough investment, in my opinion, for Black men to go either way. I think that's you're going to see more and more Black men just really abstaining or just standing in the sidelines. But
yeah,
before you go though, tell people your next show. Let them know when you coming back, what you're doing.
It's no set date just yet. I'm still putting it together over here. I'm testing out these new mics and all this. I'm still setting it up over here, man. I'm gonna be doing a bunch of different things, man, over here. So, just look out for me, man. Coming back, Return of the Mac, man. just wait for it.
All right.
You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate, you having me on. Shout out to you, Charles. Yeah, man, I'm out of here.
Right,
peace
man.
out, 100.
Appreciate it, man. Peace.
No doubt. Peace.
Charles, closing thoughts.
Always a pleasure, good doc. We're going to have to think of this very strategically, because what's going to happen is the more you disenfranchise men, like Marcus alluded to, the more you're going to have
the degradation of a country, because they're naturally the builders, they're the protectors. When men check out or think a system isn't for them, they're not going to participate.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen when you don't have enough men to innovate? You don't have enough men to protect. You don't have enough men to build. That's when you go into your downfall for any society or civilization.
Right.
So it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, good brother. Take it easy. Shout out to you. Shout out to Black Lion Security. The brother's doing his thing. So if you are at all in a position to take advantage of it, reach out to the brother and you know, get with him. But anyway, appreciate y'all coming through. I really just wanted to kind of get this started, and this may not be the only show we deal with it, because I'm very interested to see where this whole DEI question goes and what comes out of it. We're hearing things in the wind back and forth. Sometimes the data supports it, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm most particularly interested in how this stuff impacts us, because we have to learn how to start to engage this information politically. We got to learn how to actually advocate for ourselves as a distinct demographic. And that means thinking about and interpreting phenomena in regard to how it affects our position. We don't often do it, and we need to start. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, especially if DEI is not going to be, is not going to ever really specifically identify Black males as being in need in a way that needs to be addressed directly, then who else is going to do it but us? So advocating for one another, mentoring one another, these things need to happen, whether they're organic or whether they're organized. Either way, this is something that Black men are going to need to start to acknowledge, because again, there's no pipeline for us in any of these environments. And so even when you have pipelines that seem to be inspired by us, they don't benefit us. And brothers aren't often in the position to really maximize our presence in those spaces. Like, again, the intersectionality hierarchy kind of is what's used to frame it outside of white women being on the top position. But beyond that, you can kind of see the check boxes from there in regard to sexuality, race, so on and so forth. And I argue that heterosexual Black men and even Native American men find themselves at the bottom of that list. So, but my focus is on Black men. So let's get it. Shout out to Blue Socks. He says Black men can't be political mercenaries. Of that, don't throw their vote to someone. Okay. Well, that's going to be the question. It's not so much a matter of whether or not Black men should or shouldn't be political mercenaries. It's what direction are Black men going to go? And if nobody is really courting them or inviting them, and Black men are articulating our political interests. If you haven't checked it out, we've got the Black male political agenda. You can Google that. If nobody's going to court you, I think Black men are going to find their own way to accomplish their own ends. And it's not necessarily something that's going to be, that's going to fall in line with what people may want to hear. But at the end of the day, if you're going to ignore us, then, Black men are going to go for self on one level or another. So anyway, if you guys have any new information, any different information, if you have something to add to this conversation that we didn't cover tonight, please feel free to add it. And like I said, we may do another show that goes further in depth or not. I haven't decided, but we'll see. But that being said, appreciate y'all coming through. I hope y'all have a good night. I'll holler at y'all soon. Peace. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic, selfish, and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.